Joining us now is Ben Rhodes, the former Deputy National Security Advisor in the Obama administration. Picking up that thread, Ben, if Donald Trump were to carry out his campaign pledge on 60% tariffs on all Chinese goods, which most economists, mainstream economists have said is basically a tax on American consumers, not a burden on China, but obviously it impacts Chinese exports. If he were to do that, how do you think Beijing would react?
I think in a couple of ways. First of all, Andrea, you're right. I mean, it couldn't be more inflationary, right, to throw that level of tariffs. But I think the way Beijing would react is bilaterally. They would try to draw the United States into another kind of protracted negotiation over different sectors and different products. We saw this in the first Trump term. Maybe they can agree to buy certain more agricultural products from some region or person, frankly, that Trump cares about, and just try to manage the existence of this tariff dynamic, try to get some relief where they can. But more importantly, this is a massive geopolitical opportunity for China. They've been trying to build an alternative international order to the U.S.-led one based on the argument that the U.S. is totally unreliable and that China is interested in the things that other countries are interested in: investment, infrastructure, clean energy, raw material supply chains, technology. China will want to use the next 4 years to peel off countries in Asia, Africa, and even Europe, I think, from the United States being kind of the hub of the global economy. And I think that they can make some real inroads there, given Trump's predilection to picking fights with allies. And this, over the long term, I think, is about creating alternatives to the U.S. dollar as the main means of exchange in the global economy. So I think China will take a hit economically from these tariffs, but they see a huge open space geopolitically for them to begin to replace the United States as the hub of a lot of geopolitical activity.
And already Europeans are hedging and looking towards China as a counterbalance if Donald Trump proves to be a difficult ally regarding NATO and the defense of Western Europe, as well as the economic ties with Western Europe. Let's talk about Israel and Gaza. We've got two wars, Ukraine and the Middle East, and that's another area where there could be big changes. Israel's prime minister using perhaps the cover of Election Day preoccupation in the U.S. and around the world to fire Yoav Gallant, his defense minister, one of his few critics within the war cabinet, pushing back on Netanyahu's insistence on continuing the war in Gaza and not, according to Gallant, putting high enough priority on returning the hostages. And now he's gone, and he's got a free reign within the cabinet, and a president-elect who is not going to restrain him on Iran, Gaza, or other military moves, at least according to what Donald Trump has pledged to him openly in Mar-a-Lago on July 26th when they were down there in public at a photo op.
Yeah, I think if you're Netanyahu, you're in the strongest position you've been in since October 7th, even before the election. He is kind of done away with any sense of a unity government. This is Bibi Netanyahu and his coalition running the show. No interest in a kind of ceasefire for hostage deal. What I look for is if you're Netanyahu and the Israeli right wing in that cabinet, you have a 4-year period to do all the things that you want to do. So, Andrea, I look not only for the kind of continued bombardment and potentially the displacement of people from northern Gaza, I start to consider things like the annexation of the West Bank. If ever there was a time that Israel was going to try to make that kind of move, they might see a Trump presidency as the time to do that. We could literally be looking at efforts to kind of redraw the map of the Middle East. I think Iran, there are risks of escalation there. There are Israelis who wanted to go after the nuclear facilities, the oil facilities. Interestingly, Andrea, the break there might actually be Vladimir Putin, who is clearly a close ally of the Iranians. He's relied on Iranian drones for his war in Ukraine. He doesn't want to see a regime change effort led by Israel in Iran. So there may be some interesting geopolitical overlapping interests in the Middle East. But I would look to the West Bank and Gaza and just how far Israel might push, knowing that they have a kind of complete permission structure from Trump to do what they want to do.
Do you think that there would be any restraint on Netanyahu's ambitions, military ambitions in those various directions, and territorial ambitions from the Saudis because of, the Arab Street, the anger in the Palestinian world over what's happened in Gaza? Would he dangle normalization and the economic and military benefits to Netanyahu in order to give something to the Palestinians?
the Biden administration tried that, but MBS came out
Right.
a few weeks ago and said no normalization until there is a Palestinian state. And that was a very firm and new position from MBS, that he wasn't going to settle for things like, aspirational pursuit of a Palestinian state. MBS would have to move off of that position to normalize, because there's no way in which there's going to be a Palestinian state in the next 4 years. And so I don't know. That may be the play that they're counting on. That's worked in the past. But given the scale of this Israeli military operation, the outrage about it on the Arab street, I think that's risky for MBS. He may be more likely to cut his own parallel deal with Trump for nuclear technology, for additional defense technology, for artificial intelligence. That's something the Saudis would want from the United States. Biden's been reticent to do that. So you may see the Saudis kind of doing their own bilateral things with Trump. But I'm not sure that there's some kind of Abraham Accords framework that can change a dynamic in which I think Israel has real territorial designs on the West Bank and perhaps even northern Gaza in the coming months.
And we both know where Donald Trump made his first overseas trip, which broke all precedent, which was to Riyadh when he was first elected president. And, of course, the continuing relationship and the business relationship between the Saudi leader and Jared Kushner.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that the $2 billion of Saudi money went into Jared Kushner's investment fund in the last 4 years. If you don't think that creates conflicts of interest, I don't know what world you're living in. It is the world we're living in. It's this very transactional world, Andrea. I mean, to tie all these threads together, Trump is going to be transactional as president. He's going to gravitate to people like Putin, who are strongmen, or people like MBS, who have a lot of money, people like Netanyahu, who are ideological co-travelers, Orban. For U.S. allies, they have some hard choices to make.
And according to my reporting, that commitment of $2 billion was made to Jared Kushner in Saudi Arabia by MBS on January 6th or January 5th, depending on the time zone at the time. And that's when he had to fly back, Jared did, from that trip to the kingdom because of what was happening at the U.S. Capitol. But that's when that startup commitment was made, while he was still a White House official.
Yeah.
And Rose, we'll leave it there. Yeah, go ahead.
Democracy. I don't think MBS was concerned about democracy at the time. Let's just say that. I mean, this is where we are.